Hello and welcome to Dashcore Group's development update. We are here with the platform, core, and mobile teams to give you an update of what happened in the past 4 weeks. A lot. We are planning this session for 60 minutes, so I hope we can fit in. And we are planning a Q&A session at the end. So if you have any comments, questions, it says live stream isn't available at the moment.
It works.
Works for you? All right. So if you have any questions, comments, please leave us a question in the live chat below. Please use a Q prefix for the question so we know it is dedicated to the Q&A session. Without further ado, let's start with the platform. Let's start with a summary from Sam.
Yes, let's go.
Let's
I
go.
like
Let me.
without further ado. We missed it a month ago.
Yeah. I'm trying to find. Yes. Here we go.
Okay, well, we have a lot to talk about today. In the overview, basically most of the team were on testing, just finding bugs over the last month, fixing things that needed to be fixed. But we also had Paul working on the TUI interface, and Evgeny working in GroveDB. I also worked actually in GroveDB. I forgot to say that, but did a big thing in GroveDB. And Ivan worked in Dashmate. Okay. So let's kind of refresh some dates that have happened and that will happen. We had a rollout, a release of version 21 of Dash Core on the 29th. We released version 1 of Dash Evo on the 29th. The way that this all had to happen was that we needed a enhanced hard fork from Core, signaling the desire to upgrade from the mask node and Evo node operators. But before that, there was a small issue in mobile, and Dash Core did a fix for that. When we discovered the enhanced hard fork issue on August 5th, 3 days later, there was a release by Core fixing the issue. And then 2 days later, on the 10th, the enhanced hard fork signaling actually started, and we were locked in for the August 28th date for Dash Core version 21 and platform V1. In hindsight, thank you, Core, for having this bug, because it gave us an extra week of testing, and we've been able to fix a lot of issues. And currently, for the last few weeks, we identified multiple issues, some not that bad, some very, very bad. And we have fixed all of them except one. And the last one to fix is not as big as the other ones. It's just, it's soon to be fixed, actually. So we'll probably fix that within the next day. And we're going to push that version to testnet tomorrow in the earlier part of the day, I think. And we'll test it on testnet for a day just to make sure everything's good. And then release version 1.1 on Friday on the 23rd. And that will give Evo node operators 5 days to upgrade to 1.1. And if we have 2/3 of all Evo node operators that do it, and actually run version 1.1, we will have most likely the blockchain starting on August 28th. We have later in this review, I will be presenting what the success criteria is for the activation. So stay tuned for that. Okay, well, here are some issues that I actually fixed. So I fixed an issue with spent asset locks. The system data contract should not have an owner. The SDK should ignore transient properties when verifying proofs. These are small things, right? I'm just getting them out of the way really quickly. There was an issue where we had some lost core information between Genesis and first block. Yes, and the Genesis state now starts from the core block time. And the SDK returns proofs if requested. I think all of those up to that point were before the release on the 28th of July, or when we actually released. That 29th of July, I think, is when we released. So all of that was before, because our last time that we had a review was, I think, the 23rd of July. So those were in the first 5 days there. And then the rest of these have been afterwards. One crazy issue that was discovered was that the credits on platform were inflating much. We should basically, there was I would not even say a discrepancy. Basically, 6 times more credits were being sent, were being created on platform than were being sent. So that was very bad. So, we don't want to have any issue like that. So now it's been completely tested, and it's matching. It's matching up to, like, after a year we might see like 1 dash difference, but that's I don't think it will ever be higher than 1 dash difference. So, I also don't want to spend like 2 days to try to fix that 1 dash difference. So I think we're pretty golden there. We have one critical issue that the fix for reward distribution, that was the critical issue that I just talked about. We also made a query to platform that anybody can request the total credits on platform. You can also request the total credits that core has given platform and see if the 2 numbers match. We also have a critical issue number 2. The queries were not working properly. And this is because when we register the dash top level domain, we do so without verification of the insertion, because it's a Genesis function of the system, and it was creating an empty tree where it shouldn't be, and this was leading to queries not understanding that, because the contract said that there shouldn't be any empty trees. Anyways, that's a little too technical, but it's been fixed. Let's go on to critical issue number 3, which was the bane of my existence for the last 2 weeks. Okay. Reference of items between I don't know why the title got screwed up there, but reference of items that change between epochs. So before we explain this issue, we need to understand what just-in-time updates are. So just-in-time updates are the ability to push a value to GroveDB and have the client library modify the value at the time that it's merging the value that you're putting in with a value on disk. It's very important for our fee system. For example, like I give an example with a cat. If you had a field cat in the system, that's 3 bytes, CAT. And you added that in epoch 0, and then you modified it to cats in epoch 1, you would have added 3 bytes in epoch 0 and 1 byte in epoch 1. See, the S is 1 extra byte. So when you insert cats, you might not know that you already had cat in the system, and GroveDB is going to basically merge the 2 and say there was an extra byte added. And then it's going to tell the client library, which is Drive in our system, that it needs to reconcile that for the fees. And then Drive is going to put some metadata to show how much is fees are owned by what epoch for the user. Somewhat complicated system. Anyways, and it's generally for fee refunds, because epochs can have different fees for storage, and we basically have to keep around that information if somebody ever wants to remove the full node, the hold information from disk. Yes. Let's go on. So the basic problem was that if you were referring in the database to an item, it would use the hash of that item that you were inserting instead of the merged item. And because of that, there would be corruption of the GroveDB database between the references and what they were referring to in this situation. And yeah, it was very bad. It's not a very common situation, but I mean, it's more common than one would expect, because it's just that very often we would not be, in our tests, in our test cases, we would insert an item, then modify it right away, right? Very rarely did we insert an item, walk away a few days, then come back and modify it. So when we did find this, yeah, we figured out how to solve it, but it was not an easy fix. So, but it's fixed now. And as you can see, there are 3 pretty kitties. They're all happy now. All is good. And without, yeah, and that is it for what I've been working on. There actually is a whole other part on more like that I'll get into later in this review. So I'll come back later. And for now, I'll pass it on to Evgeny, who is going to tell you about the GroveDB visualizer and show a demo.
Hello, guys. So I'm going to share my screen. But first, yeah, never mind. I hope you see this beauty. Now it's white, special for Samuel. To annoy him, also could be dark. But anyways, it's an almost full rewrite of visualizer, because there were a number of issues that couldn't be addressed easily because of the previous architecture, and this new approach, there are some improvements I want to show you. First is a new profile view. So profiles before were hard-coded for Drive, but since GroveDB could be intentionally, it's made as a library for anyone to use. And also application developers might have some other assumptions about how to name things. Profiles and now could be modified and persistent between sessions. So you see, I can do copies of profile on the left. So let's go grab copy 2, and let's load identities. It's empty now, but we can match it by key. We know that key is 32 in a root tree, and rename it as much as we want. Also add sub items. So each identity here will capture its value of its keys, and then can be applied some more complex alias like ID, and then use the value we have or don't use it, and change the view of it in a batch. So it's pretty neat now. And also, if you want, we can add more items under it. Like, let's say 128 would be called. So let's match it and call it somehow, and it will be there. and it will be there for any of our identities. And each of them will use its name here of the previous capture, IDDD we called it, with its actual ID. And yeah, in this way we can name things the way we want. And shall we persist in between sessions? So on the left we still see there the identities are there, and still this prefix we have. So yeah, an updated profile system. Next we have references. References are hard to use them, to visualize them. So previously Sam told about bugs with reference. Now I'm telling you about my struggle with their visualization. But yeah, I try to address that. Let's go and dive deep there, very deep, because that's how we have a reference, how we have a stored reference there to show you. So very, very deep here. Finally, we have our reference. See, it's pretty long. And what we have now is an ability to jump to what the reference value. Just with the button was shown there and this arrow. And believe it or not, in previous approach we had with visualizer, it wasn't simply that possible. Another issue we tried to address this time was so we can focus on items, and in previous version, if somehow the alignment of items will change, things will jump around on the screen and we just miss what we're focused at. So we focused on this right subtree, and if we remove the first one, notice it still will be in the center. It's also something that wasn't possible at all. So yet another quality of life improvement. And what else? A new panel, so query builder is there. It's moved from previous version, still the same. Proof viewer is also there, and themes, and I think that's it for now. So local screen array. So I think that pretty easier to use. Also will be help there. What it lacks now is Merc view. It was before there, but it was really clumsy and hard to use. So it's on our to-do list for, can't estimate it yet, but it's high priority now. And I think it's the last thing for actual V1 version. So now it's as release candidate 5 or something on testnet. For V1, we'll have this Merc view. And thank you. Who's next?
Is there anything else you wanted to say?
Yes.
Okay, thank you, Evgeny.
I just want to say that's great. And because of the visualizer, we were able to fix 2 bugs. So like without it, we would have been in a very bad situation. So thank you, Evgeny.
Thank you for acknowledging.
Thank you. Let's move on with Paul.
Thank you. Hello, guys. I've been working on the platform TUI the past month and also doing some bug fixes and testing with Ivan and Lukasz, running some strategy tests on a DevNet, which we'll talk about in a bit. But for the TUI, basically did a lot of changes to strategy tests and a lot of improvements so that we could do these complex tests on the DevNet. One of the improvements was to collect state transition results after broadcasting. So basically, if the state transition like goes into the mempool and fails in the mempool, we would basically get that information, and we can prevent identities from putting too many transactions into the mempool this way, which is important because that can lead to more errors if you put too many in, like nonce errors. Yeah, and you also get like a result back if it was successfully included, if your transition was included in a block. So that helped get a lot of important stats on the strategy test. I added document delete transitions and more detailed logging, which kind of, goes along with waiting for the transition results. Besides that, I moved a lot of stuff from the wallet screen to the identity screen. Like basically we had a ton of identity functionalities in the wallet screen, and I just wanted to clean it up. And I also added some more functions, like you can now load an identity with private keys instead of having to register a new one every time. And you can switch between known identities instead of like having to register a new one. So yeah, I think that was important to have. So I'm going to do a demo I added a screen for DPNS basically, so that it becomes easy here, let me share my screen. It becomes easy to, when you load the TUI, it's just easy to do stuff related to DPNS. So here's the main screen when you start the TUI, and you can just press D here to go to DPNS. So, actually, let me restart. 1 second. All right. Okay, so DPNS screen, and the first thing you'll see if you haven't fetched the contract, if the contract isn't in the app state yet, it'll say DPNS contract not known yet. So press F to fetch it. There's no known identities, so I don't have any identities loaded in the app state yet. Normally they would be displayed on the left here by like identifier, and on the right will be the identity information. But for now, we can just press V to go to the voting screen. And this is displaying all of the contested usernames, like, usernames that masternodes have to vote on. Sam implemented masternode voting, and that's kind of what this is. What was I going to say? Oh, yeah, this is on a local network, by the way. That's why we just have these two names. So you can press S to see the status for this name, and then the vote counts. These are identities that have tried to register the name Paul, and so like this identity has 4 votes and everything else has 0. And then we can do the same for here. Nobody voted here. And if you want to vote, you can press V. So you want to vote for this one, and you can choose what to vote for. Whoops. All right, well, bug, but okay, I'll have to look into that. So I am going to register an identity. I'm going to the identity screen. I'll register 3 identities. And and register names, and you can see how it works. So 3 identities registered. So I'll go back to the DPNS screen, and now we have some more options. You can press R to register a username for a selected identity, and G to query the names associated with that identity, whether they're owned names or contested names. So for this one, I'll press R and register test name. Yeah, okay. So now if I press G to query names, you can see test name is a contested name and have no owned names yet. Yeah, and so that's almost it. The last thing I want to show is if you go into the identity screen, you can load masternode identity by pressing M here. And again, this is a local network, so it's all right if you see these private keys. So I'm just gonna load a masternode identity and vote. So go back to DPNS screen, voting screen, and let's go down to test name, vote. I vote for myself. All right. It was working before. I don't know why it's bugging now, but yeah, I mean, that's it. So tomorrow that voting thing will be fixed, but yeah. So
You'll get it working.
I can't
But
believe that.
I really would like you to do me a favor and say the 3 names. It was Paul. What was the second one?
Paul and Paul.
There we go.
Paul.
Paul.
Yeah.
If anybody is listening, I have lost my mind after coding nonstop for a month. Okay, let's go. Next. Who goes next? Oh, I think this is Ivan, or is this Lukasz?
Yeah, that's me.
David, please.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. A month ago, I guess, we had the last demo, right? We announced that we're gonna do the testing on the bigger network with the more like close to real life conditions, so we can make sure that our platform will work on the mainnet eventually. So yeah, we spent quite a lot of time for building such DevNet, and it was pretty challenging to build such big DevNet. We managed that, and it has like 1034 even nodes, and
134, not 1034.
did I say 1000?
I think you did.
I think I'm tired. Okay, I'm wrong, of course, 100. And just a reminder, the active validator set in Tenderdash is 100 validators, who is voting for the block, and the rest is they not active, but they will become active at the point of rotation. So we're rotating the active validator set over all the number of even nodes available. Yeah, and we use the mainnet quorums not for instant log though, because it takes too much time to spin up the network, and like basically it's several days just to bring it up, and the network is very expensive. So we decided to stay with the small DevNet size of the LMQ quorum. but still with rotation, and keep the normal block time. Balazs?
Yeah, I think Paul, you're still sharing your screen. No?
So I don't see.
No,
Oh,
I see my screen.
never mind.
Yeah. So we planned several types of tests. What we wanted to the perform, and so of course the first one is activation and chain consensus. So it means like we want to see how platform is activating and starting producing the blocks. Eventually we saw it. This was a good feeling, and we ran the platform test suite against it to make sure that all the functionality is working well. And Paul prepared strategy test with the platform TUI, where he broadcasted some mix of state transitions, and we did like different we put different load on the network just to see how it behaves. And in parallel, we ran query test. It's a test was written long ago for testing the when we did like the benchmarks, and it just produced the querying of some existing and non-existing data platform. And also the plan was to see how it goes and see what's wrong, and check the metrics, logs, and try to adjust it to make sure it will be stable. It was the goal, like to make it more performant, like and to achieve like crazy transaction per second numbers or something like that. No, the goal was to see it stable in different conditions. That's the main goal for us. So no optimizations. That's the topic for the upcoming versions. Yeah, and you may wonder why I wrote this network is stable with 0 transactions per second, but this actually was one of the achievement, because at some point we observed that when we broadcasting transactions, we're having like stable blocks, and in with 0 round, it means it's like with the first try, they was able to make a block for each height. But if we're not broadcasting the blocks, it's just behave very strangely. In we could go like to round 7 or something like that to make a block. So that was one of the fixes, what Lukasz will tell you later in his slides. So no, not yet. Thank you. Yeah. So just summarizing, we were able to make them after some fixes, tunings, like when we tune the timeouts, because the larger the network, the more the latency. We also enabled the artificial latency from like randomly from 200 to 400 milliseconds, just to between the nodes, just to make it more real life scenario. And the end of the testing, we observed like it works very well, like without any transactions. So like 0 round, block every 3 minutes, how it is expected, how it's settled, like empty block. And with some load, we saw very good performance when we did like 10 transactions per second and pretty stable behavior. So it produced blocks every like 6, 7 seconds. So it's like 10 blocks per minute. And we tested also with, of course, with larger number, like broadcasting more transactions, but obviously just decrease the block time. So we see the less blocks in the minute. But we didn't find anything like from stability point of view, we didn't find any like actual problems there. Yeah. That was an interesting journey, and now we like much more confident that our thing gonna work on mainnet now. Thank you.
Łukasz?
Yeah, hi. So I will just tell you a bit about the history of Tender Dash since 1.0 to 1.2, which we are right now. Let's start with 1.1. So that's what we did before the testing that Ivan just reported. But we didn't have the call for quite a long time, and basically it wasn't covered on the previous call. We did some fixes for that version. For example, when we were restarting Docker container, it was sometimes giving address already in use error because it was a bit too fast. So we fixed that by adding some timeout. When we started to test the actual platform 1.0, we found out that at Genesis, when we haven't created any blocks, a mechanism that makes connections between validators wasn't active. And basically this caused validators to form islands where they were isolated from other validators and weren't able to vote. We fixed that in 2 PRs, and also we did a change that replaced the endpoint from Dashcore that we use. First one was called quorum sign, and now we use something that is called quorum platform sign. On Thunder Dash side, it's not like a big change. It has some changed logic and access control rules on core side. And we released Thunder Dash 1.1 with these changes. So after that, we worked further. We did some testing on the large network that Ivan just reported. And we fixed a few issues we found. First of all, we added signed binaries to releases. So the release script right now can sign binaries and upload them to the release page on GitHub. If someone wants to verify my signature there, it should be there in both 1.1 and 1.2. And we also had some bugs like proposal not generated in some edge cases that turned out to not be an edge case when testing on a big network. We had to tune some timeouts, including some internal queue size to accommodate for 100 validators and stuff like that. So this testing on that big network was very useful. Also, we found that non-active validators, so nodes that are not part of the quorum, cannot verify evidence signatures due to the construction of how core quorums work. We had to fix that to exclude that verification. One big issue that took us quite a big progress was a deadlock detection library we use. It consumes tons of resources, and it was enabled on development Docker images, but not on production Docker images. But basically, it was making the tests hard, so we did a configuration option instead of just defining which image should have that option enabled. We just have an option in configuration right now so that we can enable a deadlock detection on some nodes where we want to monitor that. And also we had a performance issue where the same vote extension, so the same vote was processed multiple times with a very cheap processing, but still if we had like 20 validators connected to our node, we had to validate 100 votes multiplied by 20 validators, so we had to do like 2000 validation operations. And we just fixed that to only do this validation once for each vote. And after that, we released Tender-Dash 1.2.0, which I hope will go to production very soon and will be what will be included in the platform 1.1. That's pretty much it in terms of Tender-Dash. Ivan?
Thank you. And get back to Ivan.
Yes, we did some improvements in Dashmate during this time, and mostly it's allowed to configure more properties for specific services. For example, now we are able to specify how many seconds we want to wait until like proposal is ready and created by proposer, and this proposal generation time can be set, the timeout in Dashmate now as well. And previously it was just hard coded in the drive. And also the mempool limits for Tender-Dash, we actually set default one. It's 1 day, if I'm not mistaken, for transactions. And so after 1 day, transactions will be expired from the mempool. That's more like the safety measure for the early versions, and later we will increase this period for sure. But the idea is basically if we have something strange what we cannot mine and can't put in the blocks, we should just get rid of it, because I believe user won't be interested in this anymore in like more than 1 day. Also some connection settings for Tender-Dash, we tuned them a lot for in the big network, increasing the number of connections what Tender-Dash can create with other peers. Another settings was for a state transition acknowledgement timeout. This is basically when you broadcast state transition and you're waiting for the result. So you'll get result when the state transition will be committed in the block. And on the bigger network, it takes longer time. So we kind of played with this, and you could do that on the client side, but you couldn't do it on the so basically you have this timeout on the client side in the DAPI client, and you have the same timeout on the server side in DAPI and gateway proxy. And so previously it was hard coded on the server side, and we make it configurable as well, so we could play on the bigger network with this. We added a flag to the reset command. The flag calls the keep data, and idea is that if you want to remove containers but keep the existing data, so you can like the Docker volumes, you can do it now with this flag. And it was kind of special case when you update Dashmate from version 0.25 to version 1. We changed Docker Compose configuration quite a lot. See the difference quite a lot since these versions, and Docker cannot handle these changes. So we suggested to the community, to master owners, to use this reset keep data command to clean up the containers but keep the data, so they don't need to sync from the scratch. And just by mistake, we noticed that the indexes in core, what we used before, is actually unnecessary from the platform. And it was like 4 indexes enabled for TX addresses. What else? Spend address is something else. The block time, I think. And actually, platform using only the transaction index, and this index is enabled by default for the master node. So we remove these indices from the Dashmate specification, from the configuration, and yeah, the core become lighter right now when you use Dashmate on the to stop your master node. We spent quite a lot of time to trying to figure out the params for mainnet, and because those params, the especially consensus params and timeouts, they part of the genesis, and genesis is basically your ticket to join the network, and genesis must be absolutely the same on all the nodes to make them connect with each other. So there was some work done on this field to provide the mainnet preset and enable platform there, because previously platform was disabled on mainnet, if you remember, by default. So yeah, we prepared the mainnet preset as well. And the another one was the fix. If you remember, there is new feature what we discussed a lot in this community is about the importing of existing core data, and it was a problem if all indexes was disabled before, and you need some of them enabled now with the new version when you like exporting from the full node, for example. And yeah, now the Dashmate setup recommends you to reindex if your data needs to be reindexed. The last one, not least, is Dashmate doctor command. We were working on this with Mikhail, with Przemik from Incubator, and the basic idea for the first iteration is that if you getting into problems and you don't know like what's wrong with your node and how to fix that, you can run the Dashmate doctor command and it will create a report. It's an archive that contains system information, logs, the state of the services, and some Docker information as well, your configuration. All this data, the private part of this data is obfuscated, and we are trying to keep it like the not having any private or any sensitive information in this report, but it creates a file, the archive, and you can check it by yourself. If it's like something what you don't want to share, you can remove it from it, and then you can send it to for example, to DCG to help investigate the problem. We see it as the part of the support process. So if like masternode owner is saying like, oh, something doesn't work and doesn't know what, and he just create a report and send it to the on the support .org, and we can analyze it. In the further iterations, we will be able to do that automatically. So the idea that Dashmate doctor will be able to analyze this information, and it become like smarter and smarter with new versions. So then you can help you to solve the easy problems with configuration and other stuff. Yep. And the next slide is the other tasks what we worked on. it was many miscellaneous tasks, of course, mostly the fixes. That one, Sam, I'm not sure, like, if you should talk about it, or did you already cover this topic?
No, I will very soon. I did not see that you wrote this in here, the contested documents for any epochs.
Yeah, I mean,
we'll talk
from
about it right
technical, yeah. So from technical point of view, this task is very simple, but it's very important from the, I would say, political point of view, and I will let Sam to cover it. Yeah, I'm glad to have you to take all this, like all these
Anything
topics.
else you would like to mention from this slide, Ivan?
From this slide, nothing very important. I think that's some more like fixes. And the important part right now, like we previously activated platform in local network and devnets and testnet everywhere based on some specific height. And now we use by default the EHF fork. So the activation in local network does the same. We finished our work on the securing core RPC from platform perspective. We talked about it quite a lot. So now we finally have all these white lists with the comments, what each service can produce, and we have a separate users for each service. And we consider this part, what we kind of worrying about quite a lot before. We consider it right now is like accomplished, and we feel confident about it. And we worked a bit on reproducible builds and for the drive and like other platform services, possibly the Docker images what we're producing. And this is kind of part of the bigger topic when we're talking about the like secure delivery of our releases to the master owners machines and things like that. And it's about the signatures and verifications, and we will work more on this later and talk more about it.
Shall we move on?
Yeah,
Oh, we have other tasks as well.
more other tasks. It's
More
Audi,
other
I think.
tasks.
Audi,
Audi?
help me.
That's me. Yeah, hello guys. So I worked on several small features and fixes during the past time. Very small, we have a new configuration that enables us to verify GroveDB on startup. Since this can potentially take a quite big amount of time, we want this to be in configuration and not by default verify on every startup. Then I think Ivan already mentioned that. So we added again in configuration and time limit that can be optional, by the way, for block proposals. So the time limits measures the amount of time required to process all state transition transactions, and so discard the remaining ones once the limit has been reached. So this helped a lot GroveDB as far as I was told. Then there was a reference issue that it was discovered basically by the enhanced GroveDB verification implemented by Evgeny. So basically we decided to verify the state of the GroveDB in testnet and verify all references that they match basically. and we discovered that some of them they weren't matching, so we had to fix them before the activation. And one of them was the one mentioned by Sam, so the hardest, of course. And the other one was basically we quickly saw that when an identity key was re-enabled or disabled, we just needed to refresh the reference just afterwards. So this was also fixed. The issue with SML implementation in JavaScript -core library was implemented. I think it was since last spring review. So, and now I'm working on the last issue pending for release. Basically, we discovered that while searching for the reference issue, we somehow encountered an integer overflow in one strategy test. And so this was done in the processing of storage flags. So it was a reminder with the kitty cat image by Sam. So basically the information about how many bytes were added on which epoch. So there was a situation where we were keep adding ourselves, and this led to geometrical growth, and quickly we reached the integer limit. So the overflow was very quickly fixed, but now we want to make sure that the actual process of storage flags are being done properly. So that's why this point is still in progress. That's all by me. Thanks for listening.
Thanks, Odysseus.
Thank you, Odi.
Okay, so now some fun. What is the success criteria for the rollout of evolution, guys? Well, first one is that the core fork activates and core continues to produce blocks. That might seem like a given, but we've had how many versions of core? Maybe 15, and one failed that, so we need to put that on there. Then the Genesis block is produced by platform. That is actually probably the hardest thing on this list to achieve. Then that we get to block 10, I would say that the chance of getting to block 10, if the Genesis block is produced, is like 90%. But, you know, and then that after a quorum worth of blocks, so our quorums in Evo are are of size 100. So the way it works basically is you go through all the members of the quorum, and each one produces a block. It's pseudo-deterministic, pseudo-random, but deterministic. And yeah, at the end, we will change quorums. So basically, when we reach the last member, the quorums might not be 100 members, right? They might have had like one that's offline, so it could be 99 or 98. When we get there, we change quorums. The next one is that we complete a successful epoch. An epoch is 9.125 days. And at the end of that epoch, money is basically distributed to all the proposers. So we need to get that given to the proposers. And the amount of dash on platform is roughly the amount as what core expects it to be, never more than one dash. If this happens, I'll consider it a successful rollout. You know, this is like fundamentals, but at the very beginning, this is an accelerated release. When we made the proposal, I said that I think we had like a 2/3 chance of something going wrong. or something close to that. And then later I put that down to 50%. Currently, I actually think that there's a much that things will go well. I have a much higher after all the tests we've done, after all the hard work done by our team over the last few weeks, I'm much more confident that things will go well. Don't want to give it a percentage, but I believe now that it's higher than 50% that this list, maybe not the entire list, but at least the first few days goes well. Okay, so that is the bare minimum. Next slide will be the other desired outcomes, which is that all the state transitions throw no errors. So basically, like adding a contract, updating a contract, adding an identity, updating an identity, doing a transfer of funds between identities, adding a document, updating a document. All of these state transitions basically work, and there's no errors that are produced by them. The no nodes basically go offline. Now, this is something that I don't think will happen. I think that we'll have some nodes have determinism issues. I'm just hopeful that it's less than, let's say, 10 nodes in the first 2 weeks. If we get under 10 nodes in the first 2 weeks going offline from determinism issues, that will be great, because then, you know, we'll see what the determinism issues are, and we'll address them, and the network will continue humming along. No report of queries having issues. That's another goal. We'll hope that works. So in our test, we saw about with 10 transactions per second, we saw 10 blocks per minute. But the outcome is that, you know, when we stress test on mainnet, I'm sure somebody will, that we get at least 2 blocks per minute. Hopefully more, hopefully something like 5, right? But at least that the chain continues working, and that has a minimum quality of service of 2 blocks per minute. Yeah, so the chain continues to operate properly under load. That the fees also represent something close to double the cost for storage. So we don't want the storage to balloon like crazy, and like to have users, you know, not be compensated properly. So those are the other desired outcomes. I'm sure I forgot tons of them. You know, I've been coding all day today, wrote this, you know, with some thought, but probably missed out a few things. Okay, so let's talk about the plan for DashPay. So let's start by saying that DPNS and DashPay are released on the activation, right? They do start at the activation. The problem that we're currently facing is that the mobile team hasn't had enough time to really test with the latest versions. And there are some things that are missing in more so in iOS. And we would not be able to release the mobile wallets on the 28th. So yes, so we have been talking about this internally at DCG quite a lot over the last 2 weeks. And we came up with a plan on how to get DashPay out as soon as possible. This was an accelerated release, so, you know, some bumps along the way. And even though we tried, I mean, I'm sure the mobile team tried to have everything ready, you know, there were problems like just working with testnet, and I'm sure Incubator will attest to that. Like, you know, we were taking down testnet all the time, and that really was not help to the mobile team. So we had promised withdrawals. So I'm going to continue working on withdrawals, and we're going to get release 1.2 with withdrawals around the 24th of September. I'm putting the 24th of September because even though it might take me much less time than that, we don't know what the state of the network is going to be. Like when we release, there could be this bug, that bug that is a higher priority for me. We have basically between core and platform, we're going to go in and help mobile a little bit. So one group is going to continue and monitor the network and continue to make sure that the platform rollout is working well, and basically get information from our network to basically see, yes, everything's working properly. There's going to be a week or two of just tests to run on mainnet. One group is going to go in and help CoinJoin on iOS. This is mostly members from the core team. And one group is going to be going in to help on the SDK integration on iOS. Currently, we're debating to either aim for the 15th of September or the 24th of September for the mobile release of DashPay. So it's not in a very long time, but it won't be at activation. And here is the issue with that, is that at the beginning, activation meant that you could do your contested usernames. We're not ready for that. So what we're going to do is we're going to put in a 2-week or 3-week epoch. It's not, epochs are 9 days. So either 2 times 9 days or 3 times 9 days offset for contested usernames. So you can use the TUI to use DashPay. You can start doing things probably with beta releases of iOS and Android that we'll make available. But they won't have things like CoinJoin, or maybe the Android one will have some aspects of it, the beta releases, but it won't be with contested usernames, because we really want that experience to go well, so that both iOS and Android users can have a good solid experience when DashPay starts. That's the less than happy news. Let's go on to a little bit more of the happy news. So Evolution 1.2, going to aim for the 24th of September for Evolution 1.2. It will namely have withdrawals, stability fixes, and one other thing, which is max gas to use processing fees only. What does that mean? Currently, we found an issue more recently that because of the way our fee system works, we can only actually have 2 contested usernames per block, because of the way basically there's an additional fee when you register a contested username, and it's counted towards the max gas. Not a big issue, but it's also something that we can't really solve on the last few moments, right? Because it requires fixes to TenderDash, it requires fixes all around. So we're just going to go with that. And that basically means with 10 blocks per minute, we can register 20 contested usernames per minute, which is, if you think about how many minutes there are per day, that is a lot. So we're just going with that for release. Then Evolution 1.3, 21st of October, which is about, I think, three epochs later. We'll have fungible tokens, state sync, and performance improvements and SDK improvements. So that is our current timeline for the next 2 months, basically, after activation. We have a more detailed roadmap in progress, but it hasn't been finalized yet for the next 6 months. That's it for platform. I'm sure there are going to be tons of questions, but let's go on to the core team first.
Yeah, so we're about 10 minutes over, so I'll just skip over everything and we can move on to mobile. All right. I will be a lot quicker though. So you can take a look here at kind of some of the backport part. Well, we'll show the list of all the PRs later, but the big thing that got added here recently is improved handling of DSQ messages. So right now, DSQ is how people realize that there's coin join happening more or less. And it's just sent to absolutely everyone on the network. I think maybe if you're a light client, you don't receive it unless you ask for it. But other than that, it's basically just spammed out to absolutely everyone. They're relatively small messages, but nowadays on the Dash network, they happen relatively often. You have maybe sometimes 5 or 10 mixing rounds happening per block. And so the DSQ messages actually ended up representing a significant portion of the bandwidth that any node was kind of seeing. So to help alleviate that, we're going to start sending the plan is to start sending DSQ messages over the inventory system, and there's still some overhead to that. You have to tell everyone about the hash, but the hash is a lot smaller than the actual message itself, and so that should help us get reduce some bandwidth requirements for basically everyone that's running core on the network. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that. Otherwise, most of this is, long-term stuff that I've talked about before, so I won't labor too much. BIP 324, assume UTXO, all of that we're making good progress on. In the near future, we're going to be having core V22 planning and really figure out what we want to be working on. So if you have anything interesting that you want me to be aware of or thinking about in this kind of time frame, feel free to throw it on, throw it on Discord somewhere in the dev channel, or message me somewhere else, or get it over to me and let me know about it, and I'll consider it with the rest of the guys. But yeah, we can move on from current development. Most of the recent work has been on version 21 stuff. So as we can see here, version 21.1, basically everyone is running it now for masternodes. And so we actually did a pretty good job at kind of investigating this. Sam talked about it a little bit earlier, right? As EHF was getting released, there's a little bug in EHF where it worked, but if it took too long to form, then it became very, very difficult, and the percentage of masternodes that you needed would approach like 100%. And so it could happen, but was basically way too difficult to happen, and did not match the intention of 85%. So we updated, and we figured out the issue. We had swapped a couple of things. The request ID and the message hash pretty much got swapped. And so 21.1, we had a fix where for specifically the EHF transaction signing, we were able to re-sign multiple times. And that actually brought it back in line with the 85% as expected. So Konstantin and I and Daniel from Infrastructure Latte all did a great job helping to kind of get this figured out and then get it tested. We had it figured out after we didn't see EHF forming when we thought it should. We got it figured out the issue in maybe a day or so. After that, we did want to test it and make sure our solution actually solved it, and we weren't going to have a repeat. So we did pretty well with that. We can go on to the next slide here. This talks about it. So we released version 21.1 on the 8th. It only took another 2 days in order to get the EHF transaction signed and mined. The masternodes did a great job upgrading. Sometimes I think they're a little too quick. I'm afraid it's going to break other stuff, but we didn't see any degraded services or anything. Sometimes on testnet, we'll see that if we restart a large percentage of the network very, very quickly, we'll see degraded services. But with mainnet being much larger and diverse, we generally don't run into that. But you guys scare me sometimes when I think close to 85% upgraded in just 24 hours. So pretty scary, but all worked well. And we ended up getting EHF mined on the 10th. So that put us on track for the 28th, around right on the 10th. We basically knew it was going to be the 28th. And now we're officially locked in under kind of the original BIP 9 standard as well. So for sure, 100% on the 28th, we will now be activating. Yeah, we can move on to the next slide. So Here, I had to make the font pretty tiny because we merged in so much stuff in the last, I guess, 4 weeks or so since we last had a sprint review. So I think this includes everything like releasing 21.1.1, 21.02, everything like that. A lot of good backports, a lot of good improvements and stuff in here. You can, of course, go on GitHub and look at all the stuff going on if you're interested. We are planning on releasing a 21.2 in the relatively near future. I'm going to be working with Ivan probably to just make sure that we kind of ensure that 21.2 is compatible with platform as it's releasing, and probably it'll be right after the 28th once stuff activates, and 21.2 will be fully optional. It just includes, improvements and backports and new features, but it'll be fully optional and not required. And then we'll get moving towards version 22 proper. All right, I think that was all I wanted to talk about. Feel free to ask me questions if you have anything.
All right. Thank you, Pastor. Before we move on to mobile, let me ask, we received a lot of comments. Thanks for that. And we answered some of the questions. So if you still have a question, please bump that up or just repeat that is still a question that you would like to answer, us to answer that question. You're not intended, you are not asking others in the chat. Yeah, thanks for that. Mobile.
Yeah, thanks for that. All right, so move on to the first slide there. As with the others, I mean, this is a month worth of work, and we have our sprints are overlapped with this by week. So this is just reflecting activity that occurred since our last sprint. So there are some things that did in fact roll over in the last sprint, but are now complete. So that's the view that you're seeing. You're not seeing everything that's currently in motion. Okay, but we did get a lot of stuff done on both platforms. The ferment voting objects is still ongoing in the current sprint as well, which is essentially the back-end integration to the voting system that was recently released. We had to do, a decent evaluation of the voting system, which then led to updated designs for the interface, which hopefully I'll be able to show you if I can share my screen. Maybe Balash can make sure I can share my screen. Yeah, we did a little UI work on DashPay for the top-ups that will need to happen. Oop, lost the screen there. I don't need to share right this moment. Well, that's fine. You know what? I can just put it on my screen. All right, you should be able to see that same slide you're just looking at.
Yeah,
Android.
thank you.
All right. So yeah, just a bit of a UI work for the top-up warning. We did postpone the back-end piece of the top-up. Realistically, I mean, most average users, even heavy users, shouldn't really have to top up their credit balance for quite some time. So we've got a little leeway there compared to the other items that we're working on. The error handling improvements, particularly for username creation, that was still in review at the time. We did get blocked periodically here and there, whether it be testnet things or other problems. And at that time, we tried to dip into Dashbend and or Maya. There were some changes to the Dashbend API that we had to do, so that got done. We also had to upgrade to Android 14 to make sure we could continue to get releases out on Android, as well as a couple small bug fixes. And of course, the Core 21 protocol update. For iOS, yeah, a lot of work on the Rust libraries. As Sam mentioned, hopefully we'll have some help on that front, which is essentially the next part of this is going to be the integration to the iOS SDK. It's already been mostly completed on the Android side. It's really just stability and improvements that we're doing now on Android. The same UI top-up warning was done. And then a ton of work on CoinJoin. There's really a lot of elements here. Again, as Sam mentioned, hopefully we'll get some other folks on here to work in conjunction and get that out the door quicker. But we still have a lot of testing. The plan is to go through similar kind of tests as we did before with the community on testnet, as well as kind of a beta on mainnet. All of that, ultimately will dictate how much more work we have to do, but we have at least another couple of weeks with one person doing it. So we'll see if we can bring that down with some other bodies. Some other just bug fixes that came out of the development, and we did have to do a protocol bump on iOS to 21.1 after the 21 bump. So that was done too. I'm going to show you a little bit. I'm going to show you the, if I can see how to get rid of this thing here. There we go. I don't think this has been shared at all to the community, and only some folks internally from other teams have actually seen it. And I'm not going to show you the whole picture of username voting on mobile, but I think it's important to show you kind of what is involved there. It obviously differs, I'll say, UI and graphically substantially from the TUI features that Paul showed. That's intentional, right? This is supposed to be the user-facing, very user-friendly kind of feature on DashPay. So this is the first screen that you'd see when you want to see what names, say, have been submitted and are getting voted on. Anyone can see this, okay? Even though you can only cast a vote if you're a masternode owner after entering, and validating your masternode keys. But anyone can see this information that I'm showing you here. This particular scenario shows that this username John has 10 blocks, and there's 4 requests associated to it. The default, there's a bunch of filtering, which I'll briefly show in a minute, but it does default to showing only duplicate requests, i.e. if more than one person has requested the same username. The reality is any contested username, has to be voted on. So after that screen, the more detailed kind of view, you can expand, a particular username and the requests associated to it. This view shows that this particular masternode owner already voted on this particular request. They could cancel it if they wanted. They could add to the blocks, the blocked votes. This scenario shows that there's 14 approval votes on this particular request. That exceeds the 10 blocked votes that you have for the username. So in this particular state, this username would get approved for this first request that made it. Again, you could cancel things and go back and forth. You can only do it up to 4 times. We will give a warning if a masternode ever ended up getting to that point. Yeah, that's the quick and dirty. I don't want to go into a ton of detail here. And the reason being is because, the complexity of this, it's pretty decent. There's a lot of different scenarios that we had to deal with for username voting. These are all the different kind of scenarios essentially that you have to deal with. So even though, I'll call 3 different elements to voting. The first one was the protocol level, which is what Sam was working on, and that got released. There's the UI, which is what you're seeing here. And then there's the connection of the UI to the actual, platform protocol. That integration to the backend is really not that complicated. It's a lot of the complication is in the UI. And we already had about, I'd say 75% of this built on both Android and iOS. But when the final implementation of voting came out, there were some things that we had to deal with differently and some new stuff. So it got a little bit more complicated. That's what we're working on now. And I feel pretty good about this getting done as long as we don't hit any major issues by probably the later date that Sam mentioned in September. for Android, and for iOS, it's going to be largely dependent on, you know, how many other people will be able to get, you know, added on to the development. But yeah, in a nutshell, that's username voting on DashPay.
Thank you very much.
Yep.
And now moving on to the Q&A. So we have a significant delay with the live stream. So we have like a 10-15 seconds delay. And that's why I asked before the mobile update to please bump your questions. But let me see what we have. So we have a comment from Ryan that I would like to highlight. I don't think DashPay should be rushed. Better to wait for a stable release for at least a couple of weeks. Stable platform release, that is.
Yeah, I share that opinion. I mean, you know, everything that I had been showing you on username voting, you know, we haven't had any testing from the community on that yet. So, you know, it'll be important to get that Android version out as soon as we can, so we can start getting feedback from the community. We just haven't had the opportunity to do it until we had, you know, the latest version of platform out there. So that's our first goal on Android. After that is out there, we are largely going to be ready as long as our final testing is successful. So yeah.
Will be there a dev.2 before mainnet? Shandik asks.
Not sure what a dev.2 is.
Yeah, me neither.
There's going to be another version of platform coming out on Friday. The idea
Okay.
here, what we're wiping testnet tomorrow, and I don't see how this can't be the last time. This probably will be the last time we ever wipe that testnet, unless we wipe it on Friday, and because we found an issue in the 24 hours. But yeah, it was probably going to be the last time, and yeah. So that will be version 1.1 of platform with all the last month's fixes.
Yeah, but tomorrow it's gonna be still dev, I think, right? So answer is yes.
Are you on testnet? No. We don't have time really to release a dev version and then an update. I think so.
Oh,
I mean,
okay.
yeah, we have to release on Friday, so let's release the 1.1. I mean, we've done a lot of testing on it. This is just fixes at this point. There are no new features.
Okay.
Okay. Is the private send feature technically not able to be added to the mobile application?
It is being.
Yeah, it is being added on both. That's when we refer to CoinJoin. That's the previously mentioned private send. It's going to be. I mean, we have released a beta on mainnet for Android already. That's been available for some time now. But as you saw, it's still being built for iOS.
Okay. I see a lot of questions answered, but I'm not sure with some questions. Let me just read it out loud. So Shandik asks, how does it work? Does it read the GroveDB database or use Drive queries?
Already answered.
Okay, and how about the copy data from the testnet node? Oh, okay. Can you access GroveDB files simultaneously with a running node already?
Already answered, yeah. And the answer is yes.
All right. Okay.
You just want to keep us here, Balash. Keep us all present.
All right. Thanks, everybody, for the update and for the comments, for being here, smashing that like button, and giving us questions and feedbacks.